Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Psychology Today. My name is Dennis Gleason, the associate producer of the program. Bruce unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. So without too much further ado, we're going to get right into the program and introduce, of course, the fabulous, the wonderful, the Ann Morrow. Ann, take it away.
Thank you, Dennis. Well, tonight we've got an interesting show lined up. We're going to start out talking about bicycle lighting. And then Tony Montez is with us this evening to do our event corner. And then we're going to have three real-life commuters talk to us about how they do their bicycle commuting and the ins and outs, and they're going to share their knowledge with us. So we're going to start out by talking about bicycle lighting, which really does tie in with commuting. And we've got Stefan Lemmer here this evening, and he works at River City Bicycles. He's a bicycle commuter, and he's going to talk to us about his own commute, which is a pretty long one. It's getting to be the time of year when maybe as a recreational cyclist, you really don't ever use bicycle lights. As a commuter, you probably have to have bicycle lights because you're riding in the dark at some point. So according to Oregon law, Oregon law requires that you have lights on your bike after dark. And you have to have a white light visible at least 500 feet on the front and a red light or reflector visible at least 600 feet to the rear. So those are the legal minimums, and I think we're going to listen to Stefan, and I think maybe we're going to learn that really as a cyclist we want to have more than what the law dictates. So again, Stefan is our guest, and he's from River City Bicycles. And Stefan, welcome and thank you for helping us this evening. And first of all, why don't you tell us a little bit about your own bicycle commute and show us some of the lights that you use on your person and on your bike so that you're visible.
Okay, yeah, my name is Stefan Lemmer. I work at River City Bicycles, and my commute is 25 miles one way. I live out in Boring, and so even in the summertime I have to use lights even on the way home. And the lights are really important when you live out in, little cities. What I use on my bike is an LED light. There are different lights on the market. This one is a light where you carry your own battery with you. And then I also have little lights on the helmet to be actually seen better for, cars and everything. So. Yeah. Should I show all the lights?
Yeah, show your backpack because that's got to be really effective. And let me point out, too, Stefan's going to talk about some lights that are for sale. And then at the end of his segment, we're going to have a little demonstration. But this is his backpack.
That's my backpack. At work, they call me the Christmas tree. You see, there are a lot of lights. But the one thing is that the most people carry their backlights on the seat post, under the seat. The problem is right now that you have a rain jacket or a warmer jacket on, and the jacket actually is covering the tail light quite often. So whenever you want to be safe, bring the lights up as far as possible. That's the reason I also have it in the back, far up, and again here. Also try to put them in different directions, so no matter where the people come from or the cars, they can see you better. And yeah, it's safe.
So as far as a rear red light, you definitely would recommend a light, not just relying on a reflector.
Yes.
And more than one? And
again, I like to have more on it just because one light sometimes you cannot see from the side. What just means that when a car comes out from the side or is turning right and you're just passing, that maybe sometimes they cannot see you.
And those lights that you have in your bag are pretty standard. The red lights are pretty standard, whereas there's a lot of variety in the white lights.
Yes. It's always in the bag. It's always an LED light. They are cheap. They start around $10, go up around $30. They all run on basic AAA batteries. And there are different levels on taillights, but for around $25, all these lights here, you are safe.
So why don't you go into some of the front lights and explain to us the differences of the different kinds of lights, the difference in pricing, and then as I said, towards the end, we'll dim the lights and we'll actually see kind of the difference, what you get for your money to a certain extent.
Yeah, the most people will go with something like this one. The same style than you see in the back. It runs on AA or AAA batteries. Something like this is around $30 to $40, and it is around 17 to 20 lumens, what is good to be seen, but not really good to see the road. So it really depends on your commute. When you have a lot of street lights, this maybe is good to be seen, but as soon you hit the Springwater Trail, Marine Drive, it will be hard to see actually the street. So this would be the basic one, and then there are lights, something like this one. Here you actually carry the battery with you, and in this case then it starts to be, you know, the price is coming up. Something like this starts around $100, and in the lights there are 3 different styles. This one is halogen, what is, you know, already on the market for many, many years. It is good to see to the side, but it's not really good to see far to the front. The next light is LED. LED came out a few years ago, is way lighter. Also, you don't have a bulb in there, so you never have to replace the bulb. And the running time also gets better and better. And then the last light I want to show is an HID. HID is with a bulb again, but actually it's the same brightness than you can see on German cars. So this bluish light. The nice thing on HID is that it goes really far and good to the side. When you go to LED, it is good just to the, you know, to the front, not to the side. So for people who, for example, go mountain biking at night or do races at night, the HID would be the best choice. For commuting, I always would recommend an LED. It's cheaper and yeah, holds up longer.
Sufficient.
Yes.
Now, how much is the one you just held up, though, Stefan?
So the HID is around $400, goes up to around $700. And even on the LED, the one here is actually a really good price. It's $100. The nice thing on this one, you see how short the cable is. This one actually mounts on the stamp or on the top tube, and you can also charge it on your computer, what is kind of nice.
Yeah. And a lot of these you could use rechargeable batteries. I mean, people might be concerned about going through a lot of batteries if...
It depends on the level of light, but in most cases you can charge it up to 3,000 times. The running time is between 3 hours, and then some up goes to 10 to 14 hours.
Now, do you use multiple lights in the front? I mean, some are so good to be seen, some you need to see. And I notice you don't have a light on your helmet,
Yes.
and some people rely on those, don't they, for visibility?
Yes, I think on the helmet it's a good thing. The problem is that it's heavy, and then again it depends how long your commute is. I have the one I use goes on the handlebar for, you know, that I can see the street. When you go over here, then on my helmet, this one is just that people see me better. So I keep the one on the helmet in blinking position and try to keep the one on the handlebar in steady position so I can see the street.
I see. And that does work with the
Yes.
one on the handlebar?
Yes.
Okay. Because I've heard a lot of people say they put something on their helmet.
It's good for mountain biking when you have to see, when you look around, but on the street, I actually had more bad experience with it on the helmet. When you look around and you shine a dog in his eye,
Oh.
he is more aggressive than when you just go straight.
I had not thought about
Yeah.
something like that. So basically then a person is thinking about how often do I need the light? If I just ride occasionally in the dark, just go with the least expensive.
I would say so, yes. I think the one for $100 is for somebody who wants to commute every day a really good choice, to be on the safe side, and yeah.
Yeah, and when you consider that that is your means of transportation as compared to a car or maybe a bus pass,
Yes.
that's really not that much money.
Yeah.
And it would last, you'd think, at least a year, probably longer?
Longer. These days should be longer, yes.
Now, what kinds of comments do people that come into the bike store talk about their commuting and their lighting needs?
It always depends, again, how long the commute is. if they just go along the Springwater Trail or the Marine Drive, or if they really have a long distance. A lot of people who ride through Forest Park, or just like streets where you don't have street lights at all, they definitely should go with a higher end light just for safety.
Now, what about side visibility? Some of these lights you said are kind of visible from the side.
Yes.
Do you put anything specific on your bike for side visibility?
The one on my helmet are actually also shown a little bit more to the side, yes.
So,
but in the most cases, I would recommend to go with clothing with reflective straps around to be seen from the side, yes.
okay. Now, you didn't bring a generator light this evening. Why don't you describe that and give the pros and cons of that kind of lighting, please?
On a generator light, the nice thing is you never need to charge batteries. You always have it with you. The problem right now is on bikes with generator lights, the lights are halogen and they are not really bright. River City, for example, just started to order high-end generator lights from Germany. But the thing is that just the light is around $250, and then when you build up a wheel with the generator, it can cost $400 to $500 easy. When you're a serious commuter, it's a good thing. Again, they are really bright, and you never have to charge batteries. But the question is if you want to spend this much money.
Now, is it true then too with a generator light, if you stop pedaling the bike, the light goes off?
No, these lights actually, while you're riding, you're charging a little battery.
Oh.
So after you stop, actually, it will still be on for around 5 minutes.
I see.
Yes.
So you don't disappear at
Not
a
at
traffic
all.
light or something?
Not at all. And even cheaper bikes, we have bikes for around $500 to $800 with generator lights. They come with this, motion that when you stop, it's still on for a few minutes.
How much weight does that add to the bike approximately?
I don't know exactly how much pound, but it's heavier, yes. The whole hub in the back, or in the front actually, sorry, the generator hub is heavier, yes.
Now, you're a big commuter. Why don't you use the generator light?
It was not available.
Okay.
I have a bike with disc brakes, and the years before it was just not available for bikes with disc brakes.
But you would consider it since technology has kind of progressed,
Yes.
it sounds like.
Yes.
And so...
The thing also is I have different bikes. So that's the reason I like this. You can just transfer to different bikes. When you have a generator light, you have to use it just on one bike. So.
And what different bikes do you have then that you're changing out?
Yeah, I use mostly a commuter bike, what is a cross bike. It's a road bike with disc brakes and a little bit thicker tires, because my commute is from Boring to River City. It's the Springwater Trail for 25 miles, and when you have a lot of gravel and things like that, it's better to have thicker tires.
Sure.
And then I also have a nicer road bike or a mountain bike.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, Stefan, let's go ahead. We're going to ask our crew here to help us with the demonstration. We're going to dim the lights, and you're going to show us exactly how some of these lights work, and hopefully our audience will then be able to see the difference between the cheaper lights and the more expensive lights.
Okay.
And the visibility.
So I will start with the basic light, what is around $35. And just a moment. So on here you can see you can see it, but just a second. When you go up to halogen, you can see it is brighter. Okay. But the nice thing really is then an LED light. This one is the one for $100, and you can see it's way brighter, also more reflective. So when you shine this light on, let's say, a jacket with reflective stripes on, you can really see how it, how bright it is. The brightest one would be then this one, LED as well, but you can see it is around 700 lumens, what is one of the brightest lights available right now here in Portland.
And it looks as if the more you spend too, the broader the
Yes.
range of the light is too. It's not just a pinpoint little. I think that's the problem with the cheaper lights.
Yeah. And then the last one I want to show is the HID. What is actually, it always have to warm up for a few seconds, but when you just look at here, it gets brighter and brighter. And the nice thing on this one is that it's actually straightforward and also to the side. So you see how how much you can see. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Stefan. That was a great demonstration and helpful to see the differences. And we really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us so that we can buy the right lights. We're going to go now to Tony Montez, who's got our events corner, and he's going to talk about the principles of bicycling. And when we come back, we'll have 2 additional guests on stage with us, and we're going to talk about specifically commuting.
Thank you, Ann. In the event corner this evening, we're going to talk about 4 basic principles for riding your bicycle. As I drive my car or ride my bike, I notice that many unsafe riders, illegal traffic procedures, careless actions that could cause serious injury or even death. So this has prompted me to do the event corner tonight and talk about the 4 basic principles. In the state of Oregon, a bicycle is a vehicle by law. When riding your bike on the road, you have the same rights and duties as other road users. With a few exceptions, the rules of the road for drivers apply to you, the bicyclist. So let's go back and focus on the 4 basic principles. Principle number 1, maintain control of your bike. Here in the state of Oregon, you could actually be cited for DUI on a bicycle, which means that if you drink and ride a bicycle, it's almost like drinking and driving in a car. You will be arrested, and if you're caught, you will be cited. So what you need to do to maintain control of your bicycle, not your car, make sure the bike is in working order. You want to make sure the brakes work, that they're properly seated, that they have not worn down. If they are worn down, you need to have them replaced. Make sure your tires are properly inflated. You should inflate or check your tires about every 2 weeks. I ride every week, and about every second week, if I don't check it weekly, I check it about every second week to make sure the pressure is up to what the tire says it should be. And it's interesting enough how in a couple of weeks your tire pressure will go down very easily. You also want to make sure that if you are commuting or going to the store on your bike, you want to make sure you have either a luggage rack or a saddlebag so that you're riding with your hands on the handlebar, not with one hand holding a bag or a grocery bag and making it unsafe to ride your bike. The second thing, or the other thing you need also for to maintain control of your bicycle is lights, and we just talked about lights today. And there are some requirements that the state law does have, is that you're required to have lighting equipment which includes a white light in the front that is visible for 500 feet and a red rear reflector or red light. So the rear light could be just a reflector, but it has to be visible at 600 feet. Also, you want to have fenders. Fenders are protect the bike from getting dirty. It also protects you from having a nice dirt streak in the back of your nice lime green or yellow jacket, and we call that the skunk mark. And of course, the last thing that you want to make sure that you don't do is have headphones or earphones while you're riding your bike. In some cities, like here in Beaverton, it is illegal to have earphones on your head while riding your bike or driving a car. So you want to make sure that, and the reason being is that you want to make sure that you can hear the traffic and cars approaching you. Otherwise, you're just going along and you're not hearing anything that's going on the road. Principle number 2 is ride on the right with traffic in a predictable manner. How far to the right should you ride? Well, you want to ride as far as to the right as you can, but you also want to avoid road hazards. Sometimes there are grates along the side of the bike path, so you want to make sure you avoid those. There's sometimes debris, so you have to watch for that also, that you don't go over glass or rocks that will make you skid and fall off your bike. You also want to ride in a straight line. You also can ride side by side as long as there is enough room between the parked cars and traffic that you can ride side by side. But if not, you have to ride in a single file. You never ride more than 2 abreast. If you're riding 3 abreast, like I see on West Union all the time, that is a big no-no. Also, you have to consider when you're riding on a hill that if you're going uphill, that the car behind you, it cannot pass you because he doesn't know what's coming on the other side of the hill. Even though I see cars passing bicyclists uphill, you never know who's coming on the other side. So you really need to give the car enough room for them to pass you, and if it's on a hill, you should make sure you're in single file. Okay, then you also should know when to take the lane. For example, you should take the whole lane if the traffic is moving slowly, or if it's going at the same speed you're going, you should take the full lane so that cars won't make a turn and catch you off guard, or they don't see you and you run into the car runs into you. The other thing you want to do is you want to make sure you obey traffic signs and traffic signals. That's one thing I see all the time, people just blowing those stop signs without even looking if there's a car coming. So just because you glance over, you never know where a car is coming from. It might be parked and all of a sudden pulls out and you're going to get hit. So you need to stop, and when you stop, you need to come to a full stop, and you actually have to have your foot on the ground. Police officer will not consider you having stopped if he catches you if you haven't put your foot on the ground. The other thing you want to do is use your hand signals. You have to let everyone know what you're going to do, whether you're going to turn right, left, whatever you're going to do, you need to let the traffic know. Then passing other vehicles, you want to make sure you're aware of who's behind you and who's in front of you. If the person in front of you is signaling to make a right-hand turn, then you want to slow down to give that person the opportunity to make that turn. You don't want to go alongside him in his blind spot and then try to go past the car because you're going to get hit. Principle number 3 is be visible and ride alertly. Just like driving a car, you have to be a defensive rider. You have to be aware of your surroundings. You need to be looking what's your surroundings alike. And you also want to ride cautiously. You also want to ride defensively because you want to predict what that car in front of you might do. Even though he might not signal, he might be making that right turn right in front of you. So you always have to keep that in mind, that that's a possibility, and you also want to be able to prepare to stop suddenly and take evasive action. So if you're looking and thinking about this ahead of time before you get to that situation, you'll be ready for that situation. Whether the driver is correct in making that turn or not, you have to protect yourself, because when you're going against a car or a truck, they're much larger than you are, and they're much stronger, and your bones are rather fragile when you get into that situation. The use of lights and reflectors at night. When you ride at night, as I said before, you are required by law to have lights. And I have seen so many riders in neighborhoods that are riding at night, and they have dark clothing, you can't even see them, and they have no lights, no rear light, not even a front light. So you want to make sure that you're properly equipped. Also, the use of mirrors. You can use mirrors. Mirrors should not be taking the place of actually physically looking back to see who's behind you, but you could rely on the mirror to give you an idea of what your surroundings are behind you. Principle number 4, protect yourself. Wear a helmet to reduce the risk of head injury in the event of a crash. Helmets are required in the state of Oregon. A helmet is required for everyone under the age of 16. After that, you're not required to wear a helmet by law, but by common sense, you should be wearing a helmet. And I could testify to that because I was riding, this is several years back, I was riding downhill on a rainy day and was just going along and started accelerating, and I realized that I was going to be going too fast when I got to the bottom of the hill, where I either had to turn right or left. And so as I got to the bottom of the hill, my bike went from under me. I went across, I kept on going straight, but I went across bark dust, sidewalk, somebody's lawn, and all this time I could hear my head scraping in my helmet, scraping along the sidewalk. I did not get one scratch on my face or my head. The only bruise I had was on my knee. But that just shows you that a helmet is really necessary. These are practices you want to avoid. You don't want to dart out suddenly on a roadway, and you never want to ride against traffic. And one of the things about riding against traffic is, for example, if you're riding against traffic at 15 miles an hour, there's a car coming towards you at 35 miles an hour. If there is a collision, that is, you would have to stop to avoid that as if you were going 50 miles an hour. So there's not a lot of distance where you can stop because it's going so fast. That's when you're having a car come in front of you and you're riding the wrong way. If you're riding 15 miles an hour and the car's going 35 miles an hour, you have 20 mile an hour difference there. So it's easier to stop if you're going with the traffic. Also, we'll talk about railroad tracks. We've all been across railroad tracks, and you have to go, when you come upon a railroad track, you have to cross it perpendicular to that track, and you should stand up on your pedals, and so you could take the shock as you bump through the rails, and sometimes there's little gullies in there, and your bike is going to bounce around a little bit. That way you want to have your legs also flexed so that you can take that shock as you go across the railroad tracks. And then finally, traffic signals. You have to obey traffic signals. It's by law. And I have known that here in Beaverton that the Bicycle Patrol does give tickets out for bicyclists going through red lights, stop signs, not signaling. And of course, like all police officers, there isn't one in every corner, so the chances are that not everyone gets cited. But if you're seen and you get caught, you will be cited. And also, I know that Portland has run some saturation patrols, and they have ticketed people on running red lights and stop signs. And the final thing I have is riding on sidewalks. Lots of people like to ride on sidewalks. Well, in some cities, I know that downtown Hillsborough, I know that downtown Portland, Beaverton, certain areas, you cannot ride on the sidewalk, and especially in the downtown areas which are congested. So riding on a sidewalk is not encouraged. Always try to ride on the bike path or some of the paths that are off-road. So I have a couple of things that I talked about. If you want to read a little bit more detail about the things I've talked about, you might want to look at the Oregon Bicyclist Manual, which is over at your DMV office. And if you can't get one there, just drop us a note at the Northwest Bicycle Safety Council and we'll send one to you. The other one you want to look at is called Your Guide to Your Ride, and this is put out by the City of Portland Office of Transportation. That's available. You could either drop them a note or pick one up at downtown Portland, and also there's several areas where they have information. You can pick these at bicycle shops. That's all I have for the event corner.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tony. That was a great job, and a lot of information that really kind of ties in with commuting and recreational bike riding. So I've added some guests here to the stage. We've kept Stefan with us because he, as he acknowledged, is a bicycle commuter. And to my left here, I have Dan Layden. He too is a bicycle commuter, and Randy Orth has also joined us. So we're going to learn a little bit about them. Stefan has already described his commute. He's probably, I assume he's got the longest commute, but but let's find out. First of all, Dan. Dan is actually a friend of mine, and he lives in Portland and works in Portland. So Dan, tell us a little bit about your commute and how far it is, and kind of generally where you ride to get into work.
My commute is about 5 miles, just a little bit over that. I ride mostly on local streets. I ride from basically northeast Portland, Rose City neighborhood, to downtown Portland, where I work at the Portland building for the city of Portland. For the most part, it's local streets. I ride a little bit on Sandy Boulevard, 7th Avenue, and then I use the Hawthorne Bridge to get across to work. So for the most part, local streets with a little bit of arterials.
And Randy, how about you? What's your commute? Where do you work? And
Right. Well, actually, my commute's really similar to Dan's. That's funny. I live in Northeast Portland, and I also most often commute down to downtown. And I either choose to go the Hawthorne Bridge or the Broadway Bridge sometimes, since I'm really close to it. And it's a straight shot right into downtown, but it's a little bit more risky than the Hawthorne Bridge. And so anywhere between 3 and 5 miles is my commute.
so I'm wondering how you all got into bicycle commuting. And so Randy, why don't you go ahead?
Sure.
Was there some catalyst that got you into bicycle commuting?
Not really. I was really interested in bikes, just in how they worked. I saw them around, they're fun. I had them when I was a kid. And then just the cost of buying gas each week didn't seem like a good idea, so I would go to the store every once in a while, ride to my friends' houses, and then I thought, well, it makes much more sense to ride downtown than to be taking the bus or the car, especially in the morning. In the afternoon when I can beat the bus.
That's been a proven fact that a lot of times on a commute like the two of you anyway, maybe not Stefan, but the two of you can beat a car or a bus probably on your bicycle.
Easily. The max at 5 o'clock in the afternoon from downtown, I know, very positive that I can beat the max train to the Rose Center.
So how did you figure out a route? You knew you wanted to commute. How did you figure out how to get to work?
It was kind of trial and error for me. I did look at some of the bike maps that the City of Portland offers to see the better routes and the intersections to avoid, because there are some really bad intersections. Namely, Broadway has some pretty scary ones, and so I take some of the bike routes, especially in Southeast Portland. There's some great ones through the neighborhoods, and then I go on bike lanes, and that's it.
And Stefan, how about you? Why do you bike commute, and how did you figure out how to get to work?
Yeah, I just like to bike. I grew up in Germany, so where I'm from in Germany, everybody's biking. So we don't have school bus or nothing. So when I came over here and I started at River City, it was for me the only way to commute is my bike. And I use the car quite often because it's just a long commute. But I just rode in on my weekends and just found the best way. So I still just like to bike, so that's the reason I do it. Yeah.
And Dan, how about you? How did you get into it? And
pretty similar to Randy and Stefan. I actually was a bicyclist, and then I started bike commuting because I started working, and it just seemed like the natural way to get to work was to ride a bike. Particularly when I started working in downtown Portland, where parking is very difficult, and there just isn't really a need to commute by car. And transit is a possibility, and when it's cold and snowy, I take transit or drive. But for the most part, I ride, and it's the easiest, most natural way for me to get to and from work. So that's.
Well, I'm talking to you then. You do work for the city. I assume you have to kind of, at least business casual. How do you get that's business casual?
Business very casual today.
Is clothing an issue for you in commuting, and how do you deal with it?
I'm very fortunate working for the city, actually, that we have shower facilities and good secure bike parking. So I actually usually ride to work wearing cycling clothes and then shower at work. And I've really been doing that pretty much my whole career. I've either worked at the city or other government offices where that's been a possibility. So I've never really had to deal with the issues of having to commute by bike and then figure out how to dress. I know folks that do that. It's not that difficult to do. It's definitely easier for men than it is for women.
Right.
A lot of people will leave, you know, a suit coat or something at work, and then, you know, maybe not put on a tie. So if you're going to dress in a suit or something, you may wear slacks and a dress shirt, or even a T-shirt in the summertime, and then change into a dress shirt, and then, you know, just leave a suit coat and a tie at work and so forth. And people make it and manage to work that way.
So Northwest casual attire really works with bike commuters.
Northwest casual attire definitely works with bike commuting. It makes it a lot easier. I think it's probably one of the reasons why things are a little more casual and certainly at the city than they used to be. And so yeah, I think it definitely works pretty well. But for me, it's just easier to wear cycling clothes and then change there. It's just the circumstances of my ride.
Now, Stefan, you showed us your backpack, so you carry clothing and wear bike clothes.
Yes. For me, a big reason to wear bike clothes is, especially in the winter time, it dries better. So when you get into the bike clothing after 9 hours, it's nice to actually get into clothing when it's dry again to ride home for another hour, and it's just more comfortable.
Yeah,
Yes.
Especially for a long commute, you just couldn't get away with wearing much else.
I tried it; it didn't work out.
I don't imagine. Yeah. Now, Randy, you're our token woman, so you've got to to tell us how do you do things.
Well, I've been fortunate that I don't actually have to wear really fancy outfits to the places where I work. I generally wearing this. I won't wear a scarf or something, but I'll just be able to wear, you know, jeans and a t-shirt. I tried doing change my shoes when it gets wet out. I would keep them, like Dan said, I would keep them at work. But it didn't work out. I'd sacrifice my shoes being a little bit soggy when I got to work in order to just kind of not have a bulky backpack or something. I wear a backpack when I ride, and I have rain pants. Instead of riding gear, I'll just cover my normal clothes with rain pants and a raincoat.
And with a shorter commute, you can get away with that.
Yeah, yeah. It's all about layers, though, for me. It's hard. I wear usually a thin layer, like a thin sweater, with a windproof or rainproof jacket, not a bulky, warm thing, because you're making your own heat when you're riding your bike. You can't be caught with a big jacket. So.
Now, Tony talked about helmets in the event corner, and technically helmets are optional.
Oh no.
And so, do you use helmets? And what about the dreaded helmet hair? And I know Stefan wants to address that issue.
That's my biggest problem, yeah. But I think that helmet should be a law in Oregon. I know countries where it is a law, and it saved my life 3 times. So definitely, for me, it's not a question if a helmet or not. And like the gentleman said, all the people who don't have lights on their bike, in most cases, they are the same people who don't wear helmets. And, you know, it's just...
Not a good combination.
Yes.
Absolutely. Every time I ride my bike, every time I'm on it, even if I'm riding 50 feet, you never know what's going to happen in the 50 feet.
Yeah.
You tip, you can be getting off your bike and you tip it, and then you're on the ground.
Yeah.
That's true.
I always wear my helmet.
Now, Randy, what about helmet hair? I mean, you know, you put a helmet in your hair, then it doesn't look so great at the office.
Yeah, the only thing I could say about that is don't put the helmet on when your hair is wet. That's a bad idea. It's cold. We have chilly mornings here. And then you get there and you're going to get the stripes of your helmet wherever the ventilation holes are, and that's all I have to offer. Sometimes I wear a cycling cap, but then, you know, that gives you hat head, which I'm not too afraid of hat head, but I know that some people don't like it. So
Dan, what kind of bike do you use for commuting, and Is it something you bought special, or did you just kind of transition an old bike into a commuter bike? And how do you equip it for commuting?
Well, I've been doing it for 19 years now, which is kind of scary, but and I've used all different types of bikes. I've used junker bikes, I've used road bikes. It just depends on the circumstances. I actually also use it for recreation at work. I try to ride at lunchtime. So right now I use a Trek Portland, which is a for the most part a commuter bike, but it's good for hills and those sorts of things as well. And has disc brakes. I carry a 2-year-old around in a trailer a lot, so I like to have disc brakes to be able to stop as quickly as possible. So that works pretty well. So that's basically what I've used, is a variety of different bikes. What was the other part of the question?
How do you equip it? Like
how do I equip it?
Yeah.
Fenders. Fenders are an absolute very critical thing to have. Most of the year in Portland, I rode behind somebody this afternoon that didn't have fenders, and it's not a fun experience. I mean,
No.
it's one thing for the person who's on the bike when you don't have fenders, but you also have to think about the people that are riding behind you. It's really ugly to ride behind somebody without fenders. And then lights and the usual, a helmet. I usually carry a pannier, a side pannier. I find works better than a backpack. It's just a personal preference. I think both work. And then similar lighting system to Stefan. My ride is not really in an area where I need a big bright light in the front, so I use one in the depth of the winter, but for the most part I don't need that bright light.
So your focus is to be seen, but
more
you've
to
got
be
more
seen.
city
I've got
lights.
more city lights, and layers are really critical. One of my best finds is they're still available in some places. You can buy waterproof vest as opposed to a full jacket. So for the spring and the summer, that's great to have, because it does occasionally rain here in Oregon in the summertime. And it's okay to have rain on your arms, but to have rain on your back really is a drag. So that's worked out really well.
And Stefan, how about you? You kind of mentioned, I think, in the lighting section, you were talking about your bikes. And what do you typically ride in?
For this time of year, I would ride my cross bike, what is almost like the Trek Portland, with disc brakes, because the same thing, I'm carrying kids in the back. But also fenders, and then the lights. Then I think on the lights I can change from bike to bike, but yeah, that's what I would use. Definitely, yes. And then in the summertime, when we have sunshine, I like to use more my road bike when I don't need fenders. Yeah.
Free and easy.
Yeah.
And Randy, how about you?
I got the fenders. I have a road bike. I have a touring bike, so the tires are a little bit thicker. I used to ride a really bad mountain bike with really big knobby tires that just took a lot out of me, trying to ride up hills, and just so the touring bike that I have now is a welcome addition to my commute. But one thing that it's different, I pretty much agree with Stefan and Dan. The only thing that's different is I purchased some safety glasses from a construction store. When it gets windy, when you go over the bridges to downtown Portland, I tear up so bad that I almost couldn't see the road. And so I stopped in a construction store, and for $2.50 I got myself a pair of just clear glasses that work great. They don't work in the rain, they fog up and get weird, but yeah, they're great for the wind.
Yeah, and this is, I would really recommend this as well. Yes, glasses, especially when you wear, like me, glasses every day, but for me that's also a thing I always wear. Glasses just for the wind, for flies, and yeah, it's just protection. It's definitely protection.
So pretty much all the time, for various reasons, you want to protect your eyes.
Yes.
Definitely. I mean, you get something in your eye and you're riding and you got one eye closed and the depth is gone. It's terrible.
Yeah.
So, Brandy, when you get to work, where do you put your bike? I know, Dan mentioned he works for a government agency, and they're catering to cyclists. But some people in private, and Stefan, I guess, working at a bike shop, he probably has some good perks that way too. But Randy, what about you? Where do you put your bike?
Yeah, for a while I was able to stuff it in a storeroom. That was really nice to keep it just out of the elements, out of whatever might harm the bike while it's locked up outside. But when I don't have that, I just try and get it in a place that's visible from where I'm working, or has a high traffic area, where there's, it's not left alone to be, I don't know.
So it's locked up.
It's locked
and
up.
hopefully within your vision.
And hopefully within my vision, or a place that just has lots of movement and people, so that people aren't trying to maybe tinker with my bike or, yeah.
Have you ever had anything happen then?
I haven't, no. I've had somebody looking at my bike before that I saw and was able to be like, that's my bike, not yours.
Well.
But nothing super bad. I just get, you know, protective.
So how do you maintain your bike, Dan? How do you maintain your bike, and what do you do if your bike's in the shop? Then what do you ride?
Well, again, I'm fairly lucky because I'm very close to a couple of shops, so I can usually get stuff done during the day. Maintenance is something that is important to do. It's for me, it slides a lot, and I'll be honest about it. I don't always maintain it. What's that? Yeah. But chain oil is definitely critical, particularly in the winter, riding with the in the wet winter. Keeping the tires inflated. I tend to let the thing go a little ways because if you're really careful about maintaining your chain and keeping things really clean. When you're riding every day in rain and bad weather, I mean, you basically would have to do it every day. So, once you're, every couple times a month, I'll clean it up a little bit and make sure it's okay. But every once in a while, I take it into Bike Gallery or to River City Bikes and say, fix this. And they say, okay.
And they do it for you. Stefan, how about you? I mean, it's kind of a busman's holiday, isn't it? Well, you don't really repair bikes so much. But
no, I'm a salesperson, but for me, the most important thing is, like you said, the loop on the chain, but also the air pressure in the tire. Right. And I would just like to add that when you have a road bike, you should actually check your air pressure every other day, not every other week, every other day, because you have a lot of pressure in these tires, up to 100, 120 psi, and you lose air every day. So when you check your air pressure, you almost don't need a pump to carry with you. So it's really when you check your air pressure to keep it at the right pressure, then it's smoother rolling, less roll resistance, and it's safe.
And Randy, how do you maintain your bike?
I make sure that I'm not too low in tire pressure. Definitely, we're lucky in Portland. There's lots of bike shops, and they all have a pump right there for you. So even on my commute, sometimes I'd pull over and pump it up if I needed to. Other than that, I'm actually trying to get my bike in for a tune-up right now. It's getting the end of the season. And
yeah,
I can hop over and visit.
It's true. As we get into better weather, it gets really difficult.
Yeah, but other than that, I bring it inside. I don't store my bike outside. I bring it inside of the house every night. Make sure if I had a especially rainy, puddly, muddy commute that day, that I try not to let it sit on my bike. On just letting that grime and muck kind of sit on there for any length of time. I think it is kind of damaging, so I make sure that doesn't happen. But other than that, I don't tinker with my bike that often.
Let's talk a little bit about commuter culture. Portland is such a bicycling city. Do any of you participate in any like cycling blogs or commuter blogs, or somehow interact off your bike with other commuters, or do you just no?
I'm not on any blogs. I do some of the organized rides throughout Portland, which I think probably a lot of the commuters partake in those weekend rides, like the Worst Day of the Year ride, the Tour Lab, the Portland Century, the Hottest Day of the Year ride. All those are really fun, and there's a lot of people, I think, that commute that also will do those kind of shorter rides that are really fun, and they're bigger than your 20-minute commute to work. So those are fun.
So that raises a question. I've heard this rumor that a bike commuter can only ride as far as their commute. So Randy, if you could do like some of these other rides, apparently you can ride farther than your commute.
Miles. Yeah, no problem.
And Stefan,
I wouldn't say that, no. I would. Maybe when you really just use your bike for commuting, but when somebody's really committed to commute, he will ride also on the weekend or with friends or like do these events. And so I think you can ride farther than, more than your commute.
And Dan, I know you can.
And actually, if you think about it, I mean, I was looking at this, I'm doing Cycle Oregon this year, and I was looking at the Cycle Oregon website, and they were talking about the number of miles that you should do, and at this point in the season, they were saying, you know, between 50 and 100 miles a week. And even 10 miles a day commuting is 50 miles a week. I mean, it's a good base. I mean, I did Cycle Oregon a couple of years ago, basically just on commuting and a little bit of other training. And it gives you enough that, I mean, it's not, you're not in great shape, but it gives you enough that you're in decent shape. And it's not that hard to really ramp up the miles. So I'd say it's the opposite, that, you know, it really helps you to do longer miles if that's what you choose to do.
I agree with that.
Now, that's kind of an interesting rumor, and you've disproved it. So it's just an urban myth. Do you own a car, Dan, and what role does it play in your life as compared to your bicycle?
My wife and I own 2 cars. One of them carries the baby around. The other primarily carries golf clubs around, and bikes, actually. So we do, I think it's not that it completely replaces, the bicycle completely replaces the car. What it does allow us to do is have more flexibility. For a long time we only had 1 car, and it allows us to have a lot more flexibility in terms of getting around. And the big savings, at least for us, in terms of downtown is parking. I mean, parking is $10 a day, so
yeah.
That's the big savings. It's not so much the driving of the car.
Well, and I think you and Stefan have young children in your families,
Right.
And would you consider not owning a car at all with a baby?
Not at all.
No.
We need a car.
Uh-huh.
We live
Yeah,
to the next grocery store. It's 5 miles, and the street we live on, you don't even have sidewalks. So even I want to go on a family ride with my kids, you have to put the bikes first in the car and drive it. It's really sad, but the street we live on is not safe for a trailer. So, and yeah, we have to bring my son to school and everything, so to preschool. Yeah, we need a car, and yeah.
Randy, how about you? Do you have a car in your life?
I have a car. Yeah, and you know, during the week when I'm commuting on a bike, I have no need for my car. It's nice when you have a big grocery list, or you want to go more than 10-15 miles in the city, or you want to go with friends.
Yeah.
That's always nice. And so I like having my car, and I also like having my bike.
Well, we're kind of running a little bit out of time, so I want to ask some kind of pertinent questions. And Randy, since you're already on the soapbox here, if you could speak out to motorists and try to help them understand your perspective as a bicycle commuter, what would you say to them?
Oh, well, I would say just think that there are riders on the road. I think a lot of motorists aren't thinking and will lay on their horn a lot in traffic. That's really scary for me as a biker, because I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to think where it's coming from, and it's 3 lanes away. I would that alone, if you could just not be so heavy on the horn, I would be a happy bike rider.
Stefan, how about you? What would you say to motorists?
Just slow down when you see a biker in front of you. Yeah. Just be careful out there.
And Dan?
I guess I would say that bicyclists are fathers and mothers and kids, and they're people. And just like car drivers are people, and I think bicyclists need to think that as well. But we all need to treat each other like we're human beings. And a motorist who actually hit a bicyclist would feel terrible. I mean, I've been hit once, and the motorist felt terrible about it. It wasn't his fault. It was not a careless accident. But so I think it's just a matter of realizing that everyone is trying to get to their destination, and they're all people, and don't treat us like we're not human.
And one last quick question here. What advice would you give to somebody on the fence about commuting? What encouragement would you give them?
I'd suggest trying it. It's a great way to get around. It's a great way to kind of slow down a little bit, experience a little more of the area that they're going through. This time of year, you hear the birds. It's one of the really nice things I like about it is that even in the depths of winter, I know that I'm going to be outside for at least 45 minutes or so, and that's nice. I mean, sometimes you're outside in the pouring rain, that's not as great. But I mean, I've been doing it for 19 years, and I've ridden a lot in the rain, but not nearly as much as most people would think. I mean, it just doesn't rain hard that much, so. And you can adjust your schedule and so forth. So give it a try. And maybe try it on the weekend to start with. That's always a good way because there's a lot less traffic. The city and most cities have really good resources to figure out how to do routes and talk to people who've done it before and just give it a try. I mean, particularly if you ride as a recreational rider, you can commute by bike. There's no question.
I would recommend just to stop in any bike store and talk to salesmen or to people in the bike store. They're all commuter. They can give you ideas, bike ideas, clothing ideas, and everything. So just, again, come in a bike store and check it out.
Randy, how about you?
I would say just test it out, do some no-pressure runs, go to the store, go to the park, go visit people before you need to, show up to work on time or something. Just do some short rides and get to know your bike.
Well, good advice, all of you. And like you're saying, there are lots of resources out there. Like you're saying, Stefan, your bike store, your local bike store, go in and talk to them about it. Some of like REI has commuter classes. Community Cycling Center also really tries to develop commuters. So look around, search the internet, make some phone calls. If things weren't covered on the show tonight, perhaps your questions could be answered somewhere else, like a bike show or a bike shop or on the internet. So yeah, we do have a lot of resources, and the City of Portland, as Dan said, does have a lot of help in trying to figure out what kind of a route you can use, using the bike boulevards, bike lanes, what's the safest way, avoiding nasty intersections like Randy said. Thank you all for being our guests this evening and sharing what you know about commuting. And we've got Dennis again.
I'm back. Thank you very much, Ann. Appreciate you hosting the show pretty much. Thank you, everyone that's been watching. We got a few seconds left. Remember, as Tony said, make sure to check out your Oregon Bicycle Guide. And if, of course, you drive a lot, make sure you check out your driver's manual. And remember, when you're on the road, that you're not necessarily the only ones there. Pedestrians and cyclists definitely need your attention, and please respect their decision to ride their bikes. From everyone here at Cycology today, have a great day.